Following on from the previous session, we're now going to go a bit deeper into launching, managing and running a YouTube sports channel. We're going to do that with David Scriven. David is Partnership Director at Little Dot Sport, the specialist sports arm of the award-winning digital agency Little Dot Studios, which launched in January 2022. David leads partnerships and strategy across a high-profile roster, including clients such as the FA, Team GB, the ECB, Sale GP, they don't all rhyme by the way, the Lawn Tennis Association, Serie A, Premiership Rugby, and notably the Women's Super League. David, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to base a lot of this conversation around your work with the WSL. So to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about your work with the WSL, how the partnership works, for example, and what the initial goals were when you were launching the YouTube channel?
Yep, sure thing. So we worked with the WSL now for approaching 5 years with their digital media and content production agency. Initially started across a range of usual social channels that I'm sure you're all used to operating on, and actually YouTube itself has been quite a new thing starting at the start of last season. It's been a bit of a long-term ambition of ours to get the league onto YouTube, and for a variety of reasons that we can touch on, that hasn't quite come to life until 12 months ago, but at that point it felt it was right between ourselves and the league to get them on the platform, and it's been a huge success.
What were the goals? If you excuse the pun, obviously it's about football, but what were the goals of the channel?
I think it's probably important to rewind a little bit on the history of how they've distributed their content previously. So like lots of rights holders, they had an OTT platform and were distributing content that way, and that served its purpose in terms of trying to give them visibility across their matches, live rights predominantly, as they've been growing as a league and growing interest in the competition. I think as part of that, it comes with some problems. It's inherently quite hard from a technological point of view as you start to get scale, and is also quite expensive when you get that scale as well. Also, I guess it creates the league to become something of a bit of a closed shop, so those core fans who are really engaged in the competition would happily go and spend their time on a destination that might not be where everyone's discovering content. But it does close off the league from finding new fans. So YouTube was an opportunity for them to launch on a platform that not only gives them visibility, but also took away some of those both cost and technological problems that they'd encountered over the years.
Thank you. So with that in mind, tell us about your approach and your philosophy for this channel, because presumably there are different ways to skin that cat.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend on, as a sports rights holder, like actually what retained rights do they have available as part of their league. So we're very fortunate with the WSL that they have some fantastic retained rights. They have a great broadcast partner, or great broadcast partners even in the UK with Sky Sports and the BBC, who've done a really great job over the last 3 or 4 years in increasing the visibility around the league and taking that to audiences on linear channels. But they also have some fantastic retained rights both in the UK of games that those broadcasters haven't picked up, but also as well internationally as well. So live has really been a big focus for the channel and for the league, and we've been able to use those retained rights to both elevate the viewership on the league, but also start to reach new people and build audiences for them that they hadn't had previously.
Why live though? Why was live the focus?
I think really because, people want, or the feedback that we were getting from their core fans is, they want to see more. As I mentioned, like Sky and BBC done a great job in taking a couple of games each weekend out to people, but quite often there's another 3-4 fixtures that weren't getting the visibility that they deserved, and so live gave them an opportunity to be able to take those games out to both those core fans of those teams, but also for fans that are starting to get interested in the women's league and the women's game.
Fantastic. Let's have a look at some of the successes you've had before we look at the content. So tell us a bit about how well you've done. Hang on a second. Let me try that again. There we go.
Yep. So I think, as I said, we joined YouTube back in August last year, and it's been a phenomenal success. So the WSL are now the most viewed women's football league on YouTube, outperforming some of their sort of competitors overseas. So NWSL just being behind them. So for sort of background and context, if you're not familiar with women's football, but NWSL is usually considered to be the premium league in women's football. Generally, they get the best attendances at games. They have like the biggest like rights deals, and also usually have some of like the biggest star performers throughout the game as well. So it's been a huge win for the league that they've been able to outperform themselves and position themselves on YouTube and more broadly on social and digital as the sort of go-to place for women's football worldwide.
Also the fastest growing as well. What's pushed that, or what's led that? What's behind the growth?
Yeah, so they've had like phenomenal success. Very quickly past the 100,000 subscriber mark from launch, and a large proportion of that has been driven through live. So we'll come on to it like shortly, but every 75% of their subscribers have actually been driven from live broadcast this year, which is crazy, really. That people are not only like tuning in huge numbers to watch these games, but are also liking what they're seeing and wanting to be informed when there's more content and more opportunities to follow the league.
Great, thank you. We talked about the content. Let's see what it looks like. Tell us a bit about this content that you're producing or that's being produced.
Yes, I think YouTube, from a sports rights holder point of view, has always been considered the home of highlights when it comes to the sort of content that you'd be used to see on these platforms. But I think we're seeing like more and more now that actually like it's the home of live. They've had a huge push and play into this space, and I think that's been driven largely by connected TVs being sort of the dominant form of viewership on YouTube as a platform, has now made it a more natural experience for people to follow sports broadcasts from their living room, much like how they would be used to from a linear broadcast. And I think we've seen like actually more than half of all of the views on the channel this year have come from those live broadcasts.
It's not just live, though, is it? So there's an innovative use of YouTube, not YouTube. I mentioned that earlier. YouTube products. Give us an insight into what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so we've been able to unlock with the league and our partnership with YouTube the use of lots of tools that have really helped improved both discoverability but also the commercialization of the product. So the first one here, Live Multi-View, is a relatively new tool, so it's not been rolled out like worldwide. I think it's still in beta testing, and we were actually the first property in Europe to use this tool. So I think it's been used during the Olympics previously, and I think the NFL as well in America and Brazil. And essentially, like Multi-View is having multiple games on the screen playing at any one time, all in a single player. So you can essentially follow four matches at the same time and then be able to decide if you want to view more of a game, click into it, expand it into the screen, or you can change commentaries throughout all of those broadcasts as well. And it's been a huge success. We've used it a few times over the course of the season. I think I was a bit skeptical to start with. Actually, is this actually like a really good viewer experience? But the feedback's been phenomenal from fans, and even YouTube themselves put on a end of season event and had the games in a local bar in central London playing across the end of the season, and the response from people in the room was really fantastic.
Thank you. Stop that looping. Metrics data. What metrics are important? So two-part question. We'll start with the first part, obviously. Which metrics are important for the WSL?
I think probably like visibility. So they're a bit. It's a bit of a strange thing to say, given they've been around for nearly 15 years now. But they're probably in a bit of a startup phase again. So about 2 years ago, they parted companies with the FA, who had previously been overseeing the league and are now their own separate entity. And I think that's given them a new mentality about how they just want to do things differently and want to not necessarily just replicate what you're seeing in the men's game. And so I think their main driver will be getting more eyeballs, more fandom into the league, and more people ultimately in stadiums supporting the teams and seeing these fantastic athletes turning out week in, week out for their teams. I think you're probably going to come on to ask me what do I view as the most important metric?
Yeah, so what do you view as the most important metric, David?
An interesting one. So I've sat in countless meetings where everyone gets really fixated on total views and subscribers. I think like subscribers is like especially. I think everyone sees like the gold buttons that YouTube give away for when you hit 1 million subscribers, and they're fantastic. Fortunately, we've got an office full of them, and there's some people in the room who've probably got some diamond badges as well across their channels. But I think actually the biggest focus is watch time. So like how long people are actually consuming this content and how long they're watching it for. If you can nail that and get people watching for long periods of time, it's the single biggest indicator to YouTube to push your content further. And once you do that, all of the other things flow out of that. So you get huge amount of views, you get huge subscriber growth. And so, yeah, I think like that's the message that we try to convey to rights holders all the time is, yeah, they're important, those other two things, but get this right first and the rest will follow.
How do you go about understanding the drop-off point? How, if you're launching a channel or managing a channel, how do you understand what that means when they do drop off, when they do stop? How do you fix that into your strategy?
I think like the great thing about YouTube compared to all of the social platforms is just the sheer volume of data that you get from Creator Studio and the analytics in the background. I think it's unrivaled on any of the platforms. What you can see, and you can literally see in real time where people are exiting your content and turning off. And so you can use that data to shape future content performance and opportunities. And, you just don't get that like in linear TV. I'm going to be a bit flippant here, but you sort of measure viewership by when people turn the kettle on in the kitchen, right? And so to actually be able to interrogate content performance in such a granular level like opens up opportunities so much.
Thank you. Archive. Do you have any sort of tips for repurposing archive footage in a way that keeps it fresh and engaging? Yeah,
I think it's becoming harder. I think like YouTube from a sports point of view was driven by archive a lot previously, and everyone would be used to seeing top 10 goals or top 10 moments and things, and that sort of content still has a place, but it's becoming harder to get visibility through that. I think what we're trying to do in Shape with Rights Holders is use the data to understand like what they're viewing and use that to inform how we use our archive. So whether that be, say, with a client like Team GB that has like a huge archive from across the Olympics, but actually only gets new archive every 4 years or every sort of 2 years with the Winter Olympics as well in between. But using that data from seeing like what's resonating previously and then how we can then shape future archive opportunities, I think is generally the way that we approach it.
Thank you. WSL presumably is well resourced. If you were, say, even if they're not, if you're a smaller organisation, you don't necessarily have the numbers of people, time perhaps, or even money. How do you balance the need for lots of content, because YouTube feasts on content, with the need to make sure it's quality? How do you balance quality with quantity?
Yeah, I think I would always favour quality over quantity. I think it's okay to post once a week if it's good quality. I don't think you should just pump out a load of content for the sake of it. And so actually if your resources mean that you can only commit to a small cadence of content, then absolutely would encourage that. I personally watch a lot of travel vlogging content, and quite often those people are posting only maybe once or twice a month, and their channels are like hugely successful. So I don't think you necessarily need to be pumping out lots and lots of content to be a success.
Thank you. What about building a community? Any tips on that?
I think just making sure it's a bit of a two-way conversation, and that doesn't have to always be literal, but make sure you're reading the comments and responding to them through your content. So on the WSL, for instance, it became quite apparent in the season just gone that there was a huge interest in some of the Japanese players in the league, and we were able to use that insight to be able to shape the sort of content that we were pushing out to feed that hunger. And so, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be a two-way conversation in the literal sense. Definitely some fantastic channels that are doing that in that space. But everyone can find a way where you might not necessarily have a personality that you can put on screen to be able to do that, but you can have the conversation in a different way.
Thank you. Holistically, we saw at the very beginning of today's conference that YouTube was the number one ranked platform in the power ranking that IMG shared. Why is YouTube still so important? It's definitely not the newest of those options there. And is there a resurgence, or is it just... how do you see the landscape for YouTube specifically?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a resurgence. I think historically it's probably been harder to achieve success on YouTube than it has on other platforms. So I think naturally, when everyone's resources are finite, people have put their efforts into areas where they can have like a quicker return. I think we talk a lot with clients about if you're getting in this, it's a bit of a longer play than other channels, and that success, like, albeit we've had huge success overnight with the WSL, it's not always like overnight, and it can take time. And so I think that's perhaps put rights holders off in terms of putting lots of effort into it previously. I think now people are seeing it by far has the longest view times of any platforms, and actually if someone's watching your content for 3.5 minutes versus 3 seconds, is that a more meaningful level of engagement than just someone simply liking and swiping past a piece of content?
Thank you very much. Do you mind if I ask the audience if they've got any questions? Anybody in the audience got a question for David about managing, running, launching a YouTube channel, sports YouTube channel? Put your hand up. No? Yes, sir, at the front. There's a gentleman at the front. If anybody's got a microphone, or you can actually just shout out.
I'm personally a content creator, mainly focused around TikTok and Instagram. And I currently have an audience of around 600,000 followers. And I've thought about starting YouTube. But something I've noticed with other content creators is that when they try transitioning that audience onto YouTube, they often struggle. So I was just wondering, do you have any advice for how I could do that transition successfully?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think obviously you've clearly been successful in building a not insignificant audience on those other platforms. So I think my advice would be think about like what's worked for you before, spend a lot of time on YouTube, watch content of similar niches and similar content creators, and just work out where you position yourself on that platform that can offer something different maybe to how you're producing content on those other platforms, but can be sort of true to yourself in terms of your style and your interests. I think the other thing is as well is don't be disheartened. Like, it can take tens, hundreds of videos before you actually find the winning formula, and keep trying, keep testing, keep learning and adapting. Look at the data; it will tell you everything you need to know.
Thanks very much. We'll take that theme and we'll just expand it for the last 60 seconds. Any other advice you'd give to a sports rights holder or a non-rights holder, a club, a federation, a league, or a content creator if they were looking to launch a YouTube channel beyond that? Any advice you'd have?
I think it'd be quite similar to the answer I've just given there, is that just try things. Don't go into it with any assumptions as to what's going to work for you. Like what works for one federation, which might be lots of entertainment-led content with personalities of their athletes, might not be possible for you because you can't unlock that access, or you don't have those personalities. So find the elements that make your sport interesting, and try to like amplify those.
Brilliant. David, thank you. Please join me in thanking David for his time.